Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, first of all, congratulations. An amazing, incredible victory. There's a lot of news today I want to ask you about, but first I want to give you some props. In pretty much every interview I ever did with you, you were out there talking about the enthusiasm gap that you were seeing among voters from your candidate compared to Secretary Clinton. The Clinton followers didn't have the same enthusiasm that Trump's followers did, and you were absolutely right. We saw that enthusiasm certainly Tuesday night. We didn't see it there for Hillary Clinton. Were your internal polls showing that enthusiasm gap, or was that just kind of what you were feeling out on the campaign trail?
Both. I think if you ever showed up at a Donald Trump rally, you just see there are 20,000 people inside and 5 or 10 outside, and they're there because they feel like they're part of the movement. They felt like he was giving voice to the forgotten man and forgotten woman, and they were always very happy to be there, Anderson. I rarely heard people say, "May I have his autograph?" or "I enjoyed you on The Apprentice." They would say, "We need jobs in this part of my state," or "Thank you for running, making the sacrifice, and for your patriotism, and for talking about trade, immigration issues nobody wanted to give voice to." I do want to say I appreciate the props, but it's just shared by the whole team, and most of all, Mr. Trump and Governor Pence. Candidates matter. And he was an amazing candidate, an unconventional, non-political outsider, exactly what voters have been telling pollsters for decades they would like to have in politics, but we never really had anybody ascend to that level and become the nominee.
But certainly when you came on and Steve Bannon came on, I mean, you both clearly helped sharpen his message and keep him on focus a lot more than he had been. So I know you want to share the props, but I think you get a lot of it clearly. There was Sarah Huckabee Sanders, a senior campaign advisor, said that the campaign's internal polling was as off as the rest of the polling. Is that true?
Actually, that's not true. I don't know if she ever saw the poll. I don't know where that comes from. But in terms of the modeling that we were doing internally, we always saw Pennsylvania as competitive, particularly in those last few weeks. It's a state that always felt right for the Donald Trump message, and we kept on. Mr. Trump and Governor Pence kept returning there. Ivanka Trump, Don June, Tiffany, they had all been in Pennsylvania. Melania Trump gave a fabulous speech there just a week ago tonight. Was very well received in a county that we ended up doing very well in. That people said we were not going to do well in. And that's a state where no public poll, Anderson, no public poll had Mr. Trump in the lead in Pennsylvania. But we didn't much care because we knew that the investment of the ground game, the field operation, our state director there and his team were fantastic. And Trump himself, whenever he went into the state, we were there last Friday night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, one of those other situations. You have 18,000 inside, you have thousands outside watching on the Jumbotron. In addition, I just wanted to repeat something because you allowed me to have this platform many times on behalf of the Trump-Pence campaign. You and I also talked many times about the 46 to 47% ceiling that Hillary Clinton seemed to have, and indeed she did. And that is something else we focused on. It was, we saw she had this stubborn ceiling of 46, 47, 48% at the high water mark in states that President Obama had carried twice by well over 50% of the vote. And so we saw that she was not going to be able to bring together and keep that Obama coalition. And I think a lot of the external polling, that CNN talked about and elsewhere, frankly, it was missing the fact that Hillary Clinton is not Barack Obama, but it was also missing the fact that Donald Trump certainly was a very different messenger with a different message than Mitt Romney or John McCain or your garden variety Republican nominee, and I think in the end it mattered.
Well, it's also interesting, I mean, and I was going to bring up that 46% as well. There were a lot of Democrats in the final days of the campaign talking no longer about an Obama coalition, but a Clinton coalition. It doesn't seem like that Clinton coalition, it certainly wasn't as strong as the Obama coalition had been. I mean, there were millions of voters who had voted for Obama who just stayed home.
It was not, and I think for several reasons. First of all, every candidate is different. Secondly, I don't think cool is transferable. President Obama did his level best to get out there on the campaign trail for Secretary Clinton. He and First Lady Michelle Obama. I frankly think they did their part in campaigning for her. But, in the end, I think some of her surrogates also showed that she needed them. I think when you get the rappers out there and you get some celebrities out there, it tends to detract from the messenger. And frankly, Donald Trump was his best messenger. You can't take that away from him. He was his best messenger. The other thing I would just say to you is that this was always a change election, and people missed something that was so obvious in front of them. You simply can't say, hey, 70% of Americans want to take the country in a new and different direction, and yet they're not going to vote for the guy that represents a new and different direction. They, in fact, did vote for the guy. And also, I think in modeling the electorate, there were conclusions in search of evidence. I think politics today, Anderson, puts people in boxes too easily. Political pundits put people in boxes too easily. The media certainly do. They're only looking at us by our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our religion, and we need to look at people situationally. If you're one of the millions of Americans who was negatively affected by the Obamacare premium increases, you heard Donald Trump loud and clear in the second half of October talking about that religiously every single day. If you're somebody who's in a union household, you look like a Democratic voter, but you were very, very attracted to his message of renegotiating bad trade deals and bringing those jobs back from Mexico and China.
Which was interesting because a lot of the union leaders were vocally for Hillary Clinton, yet the rank and file, as a lot of folks predicted on the Republican side, went for Donald Trump. There's a lot of news today I'd love to talk to you about. We've got to take a quick break. If you could just stay tuned just for a couple more minutes, we'll come right back. We're also keeping an eye on multiple protests. For the break, I was speaking with one of the people who played a major role in putting Donald Trump in the White House, his campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway. She joins me again. Kellyanne, let's start by asking about these protests that we've been seeing, both last night and tonight. I'm sure President-elect Donald Trump has seen them. Has he said anything to you directly about them? What are your thoughts on them and when you see this?
We have not discussed that, Anderson, but I would just commend the protesters to listen to Donald Trump from his victory night speech, where he said, "I will be the president of all Americans, including those who did not support me and who don't support me." I also would tell them, please take a look at what happened today. Less than 36 hours after being elected president of the United States, Donald Trump and his wife Melania Trump, our next First Lady, went down to Washington and met with President and First Lady Obama. And I think people should really echo what happened today in Washington. It was a great meeting. Mr. Trump described it to me, said, "I'd never met President Obama. I liked him a lot. We had a very warm and professional meeting. He was terrific." First Lady Michelle Obama and Melania had a, quote, fantastic meeting. And he said to me they could not have been more warm and more welcoming to the Trumps. And I think America should look at that and take their cues from that, that if President and First Lady Obama and President-elect and First Lady, I guess almost elect, Trump could get along, then they should too. I mean, we all share a love of America and of democracy. And, Anderson, I can't help but think what the conversation would be right now in the media and otherwise if this were the reverse. If Hillary Clinton had been elected and Donald Trump protesters were out there, everybody would be, they'd be having a canary, really. So, and
it's fun, you raised a point we actually discussed last night, and which I raised, which is, if Hillary Clinton had been elected and there were Donald Trump protesters out there saying lock her up, how would people view that? And I think that's a valid question when you look at the protesters out there tonight. You talked about the meeting with President Obama. President-elect Trump said that he, quote, looked forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. Do you expect there will actually be additional face-to-face meetings between the president and the president-elect between now and January 20th?
There may be, and I'm telling you, Mr. Trump was just very happy with the meeting today. And look, Anderson, as you and I know, it's a very small group of people who are former presidents, and he was all too happy to be there, as were the First Ladies, if you will. And I also talked to Governor Pence after his meetings, both up on Capitol Hill, and then Governor Pence and Vice President Biden met later in the day, this afternoon. Governor Pence tells me that the Pence family has accepted the gracious invitation of the Biden family to join them for a meal next week at the Naval Observatory. And I just think what you see in common here is people who love this country, are willing to serve for the right reasons, and want to make sure there is a peaceful transition. And I hope the protesters will follow suit.
This morning, as you know, Trump advisor Mayor Rudy Giuliani said that he thought President-elect Trump should start with tax reform because, in his words, he's got the votes for it. Donald Trump is obviously on the campaign trail, talked about a number of things to start with on day one. He talked about Obamacare today. Can you say definitively what will be President Trump's first legislative priority?
Well, he has talked definitively about it. He's even laid out his, quote, 100-day plan. I think that was a big inflection point in the campaign, actually, in late October when people saw the 100-day plan. They can read for themselves and decide whether it's something they could support, and many did. So that would include repealing and replacing Obamacare. It would include tax reform, which is a very complex issue, as you know. His plan is out there for all to see, so I think that happens in pieces. Maybe rolling back the 600 or so regulations that we've had in the last administration. legislation. But repealing and replacing Obamacare, it's something that the House and the Senate have voted on many times, but you need a Republican president to really complete the transaction. And, you know, Anderson, I can't help but realize that in addition to electing Trump and Pence as president and vice president, this country also kept Republicans in the House and Senate. And I think what they're signaling is, and by the way, 69 out of the 99 legislative chambers as well, what they're also signaling is, look, we are tired of people hiding behind divided government, of getting nothing done in Washington and saying, oh, the government's divided, whether you're the Republicans in the Congress or you're the president, and whatever the case is, you're able to hide behind. So people are actually saying, it's not just that I liked being part of the movement, I actually want you to get it done. And so they are poised to do that, and I think that's a message that Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell are sending out tonight too, privately in the meetings and publicly in their comments, which is we're poised to help pass this legislation. Also, as you know, we have a Supreme Court vacancy, and we'll have other federal judgeships that are vacant. That's also going to be a quick order of business.
Do you have a sense, every president has a different leadership style. Jimmy Carter, the stories on him was that, he read every piece of paper and got, mired in the weeds and the details of things. Ronald Reagan was much more sort of big picture, delegating things out to others who were very experienced, who he had brought with him, who were very loyal to him. How do you see Donald Trump as president? Do you see him as a detail guy who, is up late at night reading briefing books, as people said President Obama did, or is he more of an instinctive leader and sort of a delegator?
Well, he's both. And to the extent that Donald Trump ever delegates responsibility, he never abdicates responsibility, and there's a huge difference. Everybody knows who the leader is here. Everyone will know who the president and the ultimate decision maker is here. It's how he ran his campaign. It's how he's run his businesses. I walk into Trump Tower every day, Anderson, and I'm quickly reminded that this man did very well for himself, is an American dream success story writ large, long before any of us walked through the door. And I think as president, he will continue to be a very detail-oriented decision maker. Also, his instincts, the man is brilliant. I mean, Donald Trump is brilliant, and he is also his instincts are incredible. Not just his political instincts, just his instincts. He reads people very well. He's a transactional guy who knows what he needs to know for that transaction, that issue, that meeting. And he's also, on the campaign trail, he's the guy who actually put out the substantive policy. People may not realize that, they may not agree with it, but it's there for them to read. Everything from the 10-point plan on reforming the Veterans Administration, to the 4 or 5-point tax reform plan, to the 4 or 5-point plan to defeat radical Islamic terrorism. The plans, the policies are out there, and I think that nobody should be surprised what he does as president, but he's the leader here, and I think it's a combination of instincts and detail orientation.
Obviously, you're not going to say who's getting what position. That's still in transition. But you did push back on Twitter on some reporting that you were reluctant to take an administrative job, saying, quote, false. Could it be the sources want the White House job I've been offered? Can you say what White House job you have been offered?
No, I can't.
I know you can't,
there you go. That's between President-elect Trump and me at the moment. And to be frank with you, I'm not that focused on me. We have transitioned a government to form. I will also tell you that yesterday and today, some of the younger staff members on our incredible team at Trump headquarters who don't get any airtime and probably get no recognition, they've been leaving, and we hope to see them again. But I wanted to make sure that they know how appreciative we are. We had a fraction of the staff that Team Clinton had. We certainly had a fraction of the budget, and I can't tell you how moved I am by the young men and women who were part of our team and, just hunker down, are impervious to the critics and the naysayers, all the slings and arrows, and really believed in this man and his movement practically from the beginning. And I just want to say publicly how much I credit them. But look, I also don't want to speculate. This is Donald Trump's presidency. It's the government he needs to form. And I just think the criteria are very obvious. He needs people around him who are qualified, capable of doing the job, and also people who are loyal to him.
Yeah. Kellyanne Conway, I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Anderson.
And congratulations.